Hagar was an Egyptian maidservant to Sarah, the wife of Abraham. When Sarah remained barren, she gave Hagar to Abraham as a concubine, leading to Hagar becoming the mother of Ishmael, Genesis 16. Hagar is notably recognized for naming God El Roi, the God who sees me, during her first encounter with God in the wilderness. Hagar's background. Hagar was an Egyptian maidservant, Genesis 12 verse 16. Hagar was acquired by Abraham during his time in Egypt, Genesis 12 verse 16. Her role in Abraham's household and the cultural context, Genesis 16 verses 1 to 4. Sarah, unable to bear children, gave Hagar to Abraham to conceive a child, a common practice at the time. Hagar's trials and encounters with God. God's first appearance to Hagar, the promise and her return, Genesis 16 verses 9 to 13. After Hagar conceived, she looked with contempt on Sarah, leading to mistreatment and her flight into the wilderness, Genesis 16 verses 4 to 6. Hagar's initial mistreatment and flight to the wilderness, Genesis 16 verses 6 to 8. The angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar by a spring, instructing her to return and submit to Sarah, and promised her numerous descendants, Genesis 16 verses 7 to 11. Hagar named God El Roi and returned to bear Ishmael, Genesis 16 verses 13 to 15. Definition of allegory. An allegory is a narrative in which characters, events, and details of setting have symbolic meaning. These elements often represent abstract ideas or concepts, conveying a deeper moral, spiritual, or political message. In literature and art, allegory allows for the expression of complex ideas in a more tangible form. Two women and two covenants. Hagar, handmaid/slave, represents the Old Covenant and bondage. Sarah, free woman, represents the New Covenant and freedom. Two sons and two births. Ishmael represents a natural birth associated with the Jewish religion, where identity is determined by lineage. Isaac represents a birth of promise, symbolizing the Church of Christ and spiritual birth. Two social ranks and two spiritual ranks. Ishmael symbolizes domestic and legal bondage within the Jewish religion. Isaac represents domestic freedom and spiritual liberty in the Church of Christ. Two characters with two dispositions. Ishmael, associated with persecution, reflecting the conflict between the Jewish religion and the Church. Isaac, also seen as a persecutor, indicating the historical tension. Two inheritances. Ishmael represents a slave's portion, the temporal possession of Canaan linked to the Jewish nation. Isaac represents a prince's portion, signifying the spiritual inheritance of the Church of Christ. Two were cast out. Hagar and Ishmael symbolize the Old Covenant being cast out. Sarah and Isaac remain, representing the New Covenant, with Isaac as the child of promise, and Christians are seen as children of this promise. Hagar's second flight. The conflict between Sarah and Hagar after Isaac's birth. Tensions rose again, and Sarah asked Abraham to cast out Hagar and Ishmael, Genesis 21 verses 8 to 10. Abraham's difficult decision and God's guidance. God reassured Abraham to follow Sarah's request, promising to make a nation of Ishmael as well, Genesis 21 verses 11 to 13. Hagar's journey into the wilderness. God provided for Hagar and Ishmael, promising that Ishmael would become a great nation, Genesis 21 verses 14 to 21. God's continued faithfulness. Reflections on Hagar's patience and God's faithfulness through her trials. God's reassurance and provision in the wilderness, Genesis 21 verses 17 to 19. Hagar's story highlights God's compassion and faithfulness as he provided for her despite her low social status. Ishmael's future and God's promise fulfilled in Genesis 21 verses 20 to 21. 25:16 Ishmael grew up to become an expert with the bow and had 12 sons who became tribal leaders. Genesis 25 verses 12 to 18. Application to modern life. Learning patience through trials and trusting in God's timing. Recognizing God's faithfulness in personal struggles. Practical steps to cultivate patience as a fruit of the Spirit. Learning patience through trials and trusting in God's timing. Hagar's story teaches us the importance of patience, especially during difficult times. When faced with mistreatment and uncertainty, Hagar fled to the wilderness. In her distress, she encountered God, who promised her a future filled with hope and blessings. Through her trials, Hagar learned to trust in God's timing rather than her own understanding. Her patience was rewarded as God fulfilled his promises to her and her son, Ishmael. This teaches us that enduring hardships with patience allows us to experience God's perfect timing and plan for our lives. Recognizing God's faithfulness in personal struggles. In personal struggles, it can be easy to feel abandoned or overlooked. Hagar felt this way when she fled into the wilderness, yet God showed his faithfulness by meeting her there and reassuring her of his promises. Similarly, in our own lives, recognizing God's faithfulness involves remembering how he has provided for and guided us through past challenges. Reflecting on these moments can strengthen our faith and remind us that God is always present, even in the most difficult times. Practical steps to cultivate patience as a fruit of the Spirit. Prayer and meditation. Regularly pray for patience and meditate on scriptures that emphasize waiting on God's timing, such as Psalm 27 verse 14 and Isaiah 40 verse 31. Reflect on past experiences. Recall instances where waiting led to positive outcomes, reinforcing the value of patience. Practice mindfulness. Stay present in the moment and avoid rushing through tasks or decisions, fostering a more patient mindset. Set realistic expectations. Understand that not everything happens immediately. Setting realistic goals can help manage impatience. Engage in spiritual disciplines. Practices such as fasting and silence can help develop self-control and patience. Surround yourself with supportive community. Engage with others who exhibit patience and can provide encouragement and accountability. Embrace delays as opportunities. View delays and waiting periods as opportunities to grow spiritually and develop a deeper reliance on God. By incorporating these steps into daily life, one can gradually cultivate patience, allowing it to grow as a fruit of the Spirit and enhance spiritual maturity. Recap of Hagar's journey and key lessons on patience. Hagar's journey is a profound testament to the transformative power of patience and trust in God's faithfulness. From her initial status as a maidservant to becoming the mother of a great nation, Hagar's life was marked by trials and divine encounters. Her experiences in the wilderness, where she named God El Roi and later found sustenance for her and Ishmael, highlight key lessons on patience. Through her story, we see that enduring hardships with a patient heart allows us to witness God's perfect timing and abundant promises. Hagar's ability to trust in God's plans despite her circumstances serves as a powerful reminder that patience is not passive waiting but active faith in God's sovereignty. Encouragement to trust in God's faithfulness in all circumstances. As we reflect on Hagar's story, we are encouraged to trust in God's faithfulness in all circumstances, knowing that He sees us and provides for us in ways beyond our understanding. Just as Hagar found hope and direction in her darkest moments, we too can find strength in trusting God's plans for our lives. By cultivating patience as a fruit of the Spirit and recognizing God's hand in our personal struggles, we can navigate life's challenges with confidence and peace. Let Hagar's journey inspire us to embrace patience, trust in God's timing, and rest in His unwavering faithfulness.